This is BSS Sports.
Fires to the end zone. It's caught. It's Greg Lewis. Touchdown.
Brooks with one, lets it fly at the horn. It's gone.
Here's Crosby with a burst of speed up the middle. Gets open and scores.
A grand slam for A-Rod.
Pure genius from David Beckham.
And it's in. Thierry Henry with a bullet. Touchdown.
With Thomas Brooks, Steve Shields, and Trevor Struthers. Only on 91X.
Welcome to another edition of BSS Sports. Trevor here, and unfortunately I'm alone today, as due to busy schedules and technical difficulties, Steve and Thomas couldn't be here for the episode on 91X. However, we do have a plan to release an episode either tonight or tomorrow, and that'll be on the YouTube BSS Productions, but also on the Facebook BSS Sports. If you want an easier way to get access to it, you can find it through the Facebook. And if you haven't yet, give the Facebook a like, because we really appreciate it, and we'll love you for it. But now moving into what ultimately matters most. Starting locally, the Under-19 Women's World Floorball Championships will start this week. It starts Wednesday and will run until Sunday, if you haven't heard. And the opening ceremonies will be tomorrow night at the Yardman Arena. The first game will be Canada against Japan. That's also at the Yardman Wednesday at 10:25 in the morning. And just so you know, every game will be at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center, whether it be at the Yardman Rink or Rink B. And if you want any more information, stuff like schedules, standings, that kind of thing, check out floorball2016.ca. With that, now we'll move to Toronto. And what a weekend it was for Toronto sports. Let me just throw that out there right now. But we're going to start with the Raptors, because they had the big Game 7 last night. And we could be talking about heartbreak, we could be talking about fire Casey, we could be talking about not bothering to re-sign DeMar DeRozan, what do you do with Kyle Lowry? But instead, we're happy. And that's different for Toronto sports. It's a different feeling. But the Raptors win Game 7 last night, 89-84, and it's their first playoff series win since 2001, and only the second in franchise history. And it feels like a monkey off the back, and it'll be interesting to see what happens now going forward, now that that monkey's gone. Maybe that's what they felt last year, and that's why they struggled so much against the Wizards. Maybe that's what they felt 2 years ago against the Brooklyn Nets, where they came one possession away from at least getting overtime in Game 7 at home. Maybe that's what they felt, and now they don't have to feel that anymore. They don't have to feel that in the second round this year, and they don't have to feel that in the playoffs next year, assuming they make it. And now there's a weight off the back of not just the players, but also Dwayne Casey. Now there's rumors out there that Dwayne Casey could sign a 3-year extension with the team. And so it's amazing how the narrative can change in just a year. But it wasn't all perfect for the Raptors in Game 7. Why do I say that? Well, they got outscored in the paint, and this was very small. They were outscored in the paint by 2. 40-38, Indiana outscored them down low. But the thing that stood out to me the most was Indiana shot 47% to the Raptors' 38%. That just can't happen. Moving forward against the Miami Heat, that can't happen. If you do that against the Miami Heat, that's going to come back to haunt you. And moving on, if you even get past Miami, like doing that against Cleveland, you're digging yourself a bigger hole. Doing that against, Golden State or San Antonio, that's going to come back to haunt you more and more as you go through the playoffs. And so that just can't happen. I mean, I do not see them winning a game shooting 38% against the Heat or any other team in the NBA to the end of the playoffs. Like any team that's still alive right now, you shoot 38% against that team, you're probably not winning the game. Raptors included. If Miami shoots 38 in a game against the Raptors, they're probably not going to win that game. You just can't shoot below 40%, I feel like, in the playoffs and think you're going to win the game. No, I mean, 38% is only 2% below 40. It could have been the difference of 1 or 2 shots, but that's something that definitely has to be a little bit higher moving forward. I mean, Indiana, they almost made half of their field goals. So that's something that defensively they were fine, and they ultimately ended up getting the win. But offensively, you have to be a bit more selective, and that's something I feel like the Raptors lacked in this game, and that's going to have to change moving forward. So that's something that could be interesting. What's also interesting is the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to pick first in this year's NHL entry draft. Assuming they don't trade the pick away, and obviously I don't know why they would, they're rebuilding, it makes all the sense in the world to keep it. So they probably will. but it's the first time they'll pick first, assuming they hold on to that pick, since they drafted Wendell Clark in 1985. 1985, that's a long time. And although the Maple Leafs will pick first in this draft, they're not the actual winners of the draft lottery. The actual winners were the Winnipeg Jets and Columbus Blue Jackets, who actually moved from outside the top three to Winnipeg being second and Columbus being third. And obviously with that, Winnipeg's going to probably get Patrick Laine, and that's one heck of a pickup for a team that was picking, fourth, fifth, something like that. So sort of, middle of the top 10. They maybe get a decent defenseman prospect there, but now they got to move up and take a guy like Patrick Laine, who people are talking about are pushing Matthews for that first overall pick a little bit. That's an interesting conversation moving forward. Who should be that first overall pick? I feel like it should be Austin Matthews, and obviously that's the consensus, but Patrick Laine has definitely made things a little bit more interesting than you would think. And Laine's a guy that wasn't really on many teams' radar, I feel like. But this is a guy that lit it up at the World Juniors. And just like that, we're talking about him pushing Matthews for that first overall pick. And I think Laine, assuming Matthews goes first overall, Laine is the clear second overall pick no matter what. Even if Winnipeg wants to take a defenseman, they shouldn't do that because that's not smart. You pick the best available player, and that'll be Patrick Laine. And so yeah, Jets fans, Blue Jackets fans, if you're out there, you're the real winners of the draft lottery. Speaking of the draft lottery, the reason why you were the winners of the draft lottery is this is the first year of the 3 lottery format for the draft lottery. And I really like it, because it makes the draft lottery more meaningful for the teams that just missed the playoffs. Ultimately, it didn't have anything to do with anything this year. There were 2 teams that moved up, Columbus and Winnipeg, I already mentioned them. And they were both, between 1 and 10. They were up there. They weren't just missing the playoffs. But let's take the Ottawa Senators, for example. They finished 12th last in the league, and so they have the 12th best shot at winning the lottery. Clearly, you wouldn't win the lottery probably with those odds unless some sort of miracle happens. But now you have a shot at 2 other picks in that top 3 instead of just that first pick. And so now it makes things more interesting. And especially with the picks, the 4, 5, 6, and 7s, maybe even 8s of the world, they're going to have a pretty solid shot at moving up into the top 3 like we saw. And that almost makes you feel like if you're going to tank, and then you have the best shot at that first overall pick, because you don't want to be second or third, because apparently if you are, history suggests by this year, if you're second or third last, then you're going to be bumped down. That's probably something that we'll see in the future, maybe not with both picks, but at least one of them. So now we're going to stay in Toronto, but we're going to move to the Diamond and talk about the Blue Jays. And they opened up May yesterday with a 5-1 win in Tampa Bay. Now maybe things are turning for the better. They had a tough April, 11-14 in April, but they had a rough April last year, and how did that turn out? They went to Game 6 of the ALCS, so it's not the end of the world, and they have a chance to turn things around here. They're 3 games back of Boston, and we're still technically early, so I don't know exactly why I'm looking at the standings, but you get an idea of where they are after 1 month anyway. And now probably the most interesting talking point with the Blue Jays is probably their struggling offense. And, there's no other way to put it. At times they've struggled. They're striking out a ton, and that's something that seems to continue. It doesn't seem to end. Sometimes you'll have your rough 2-week stretch, or even a week stretch, but this is something that pretty much lasted throughout the entire month. And obviously Russell Martin being hurt, that's something that didn't help last month. And Tulo struggled, but a home run the other day, so maybe we're starting to see things turn for the better now. But the thing that has kind of kept the Blue Jays in it, and only 3 games back of Boston and 2 games under 500, is the great starting pitching we've seen. Jay Happ's been absolutely tremendous. And who would have thought Jay Happ would be off to the start that he is, and it's maybe not something he'll continue throughout the entire season. But he's showing you what he can do, and he's being pretty effective. And this is a guy that all of a sudden I have confidence in to throw out there once every 5th day and deliver and give my team a chance to win, which is something that wasn't necessarily the case in his first stint with the Blue Jays. Marcus Stroman, that's a guy that went out and dealt yesterday on his birthday and did a tremendous job, gave the team a chance to win. That's the one thing I'm noticing about this rotation. Aaron Sanchez, Marco Estrada, you name it, they're going out there and giving the Blue Jays a chance to win. Even R.A. Dickey, who has struggled the most amongst the starters, and there's no question about that. But the thing is, right now, R.A. Dickey is technically the number 5 starter. And right now, R.A. Dickey is a pretty good number 5 starter. This is a guy that will give you 200 innings no matter what. And I feel like I say that every week on this show, but it's something that can't be emphasized enough, especially when you have Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez, 2 young guys in your rotation, where you don't know how many innings they'll be able to throw when all is said and done. So R.A. Dickey, at times he'll struggle, we know that, and he had a rough April, but this is not his first rough April in Toronto. And at worst, he's been an average pitcher that has been absolutely reliable. He hasn't missed a start. Dude was banged up for a good chunk of last year, but he was there, and he made his starts, and he pitched 200 innings, and he was there in the playoffs. And I feel like every time I praise R.A. Dickey, people still remind me of that game against the Royals in the ALCS, but we're moving on from that now. You can't hold one start against a guy for the rest of his career with that team. It's just unfair. So now they start a 4-game set with the Texas Rangers. Texas is a team that can hit you if you make mistakes. They have guys like Prince Fielder, Josh Hamilton. They hit mistakes. And they'll make you pay for that, especially at the Rogers Center. But my pitching matchup to watch for this series will be on Thursday with Derek Holland against the red-hot Jay Happ. Derek Holland's a guy that, when healthy, is one of the best starters the Rangers have, and Jay Happ is maybe the Blue Jays' best starter going right now. I mean, you could probably argue that, but he's definitely in the conversation. And so that's something that will be interesting moving forward. Now, jumping to the NFL Draft. Now, I didn't watch too much of the NFL Draft, but the interesting story from the NFL Draft is Laramie Tunsil, offensive tackle taken 13th overall by the Miami Dolphins. But it's not that he was drafted, per se, or maybe it is, but it's the fact that the Ravens were talking about taking him at 6th overall. A Ravens source has confirmed this. We're not just making stuff up. But they were talking about taking him 6th overall, if not for the photo of Tunsil on Twitter smoking some sort of drug through a gas mask. The tweet has since obviously been deleted, and his Instagram account has actually been completely deleted. But, you have to be smarter than this, don't you? This was a recent thing. Within a 1 month or 2 month window, why would you do something like that when the biggest day of your career is coming up? Ultimately, it didn't make that big of a deal, I suppose. He just dropped a little bit, still went in the first round, still went in the first half, the first 16 of the first round. So that's not that big of a deal, I suppose. But call me crazy, I'd rather play for the Baltimore Ravens than I would the Miami Dolphins. And maybe that's something he'll be regretting in the future. That's it for this episode of BSS Sports. And like I said earlier, if you wanted to hear more than just me, we plan on doing a new episode that will be released either tonight or tomorrow. And that'll feature at least 2 of us, hopefully all 3 of us. It will be on our YouTube account, BSS Productions, but also on our Facebook, BSS Sports. So hop on Facebook, BSS Sports, give us a like, subscribe to us at BSS Productions on YouTube. Also, follow us on Twitter at BSS Sports. I'm also going to plug our personal Twitter handles. Thomas is at TommyBro with 2 O's. Steve is at Steven_Schill. And I am at Trevor Struthers. Easy enough. I would spell my name for you, but we don't have time. I'll talk to you next week, hopefully with both Steve and Thomas.